Adrian corrected me for the third time before the appetizers even arrived. First it was, "Dad, you asked that question already. You're repeating yourself." Then, "Don't order the ribeye. It's too heavy for you at your age." And finally, as the room filled with the warm scent of wood smoke and citrus glaze drifting from the kitchen, he leaned in and whispered, low, but sharp enough to cut, "Use the smaller fork, Dad. People are watching." That last one did it. The whisper wasn't cruel on its face, but it was the tone of a man who believed he was managing me, the tone of someone who'd already written the version of me he preferred, declining, confused, needing guidance. My hand shook slightly, not from nerves. My nerves died years ago, but from something deeper, something I'd been hiding for months. The tremor tugged at the edges of his assumptions. He watched it like it confirmed a theory. "You okay?" he asked, but the concern sounded performative, just loud enough for nearby tables to hear. The dining room at the Driftwood house buzzed around us, glasses clinking, soft jazz weaving through murmurs, servers in charcoal uniforms gliding between tables. A couple behind us paused mid-conversation. The smell of butter and roasted thyme drifted past. Everything was too normal for what was about to happen. I inhaled, feeling a sharp pinch under my ribs. The doctor had called it episodic pain. I knew what it meant, but I hadn't told Adrian. Not yet. Not until I told him everything. I had planned a quieter reveal. Later. Private. Controlled. But his whisper, the third condescending nudge in 20 minutes, tipped something inside me. Maybe because it wasn't just about a fork. It was about 30 years of me keeping one truth locked away so my son wouldn't become the one thing I feared most. Entitled. My late wife used to say, if he grows up thinking he owns the world, he'll never learn how to stand in it. She was right. She usually was. So I hid the world we'd built. I let him think I was a quiet man with a modest pension and a dying truck. I let him believe I lived small. And for decades, I did it well. But tonight, watching him sit across from me, expensive watch flashing, posture stiff with self-importance, I felt the weight of my mistake. I had protected him so well that he now believed I needed protecting. His fingers flicked a crumb off the tablecloth, and he sighed with that practiced adult disappointment he'd perfected recently. "Dad, please," he murmured. "Just try to be present tonight." Present. Something inside me snapped, and then aligned. I straightened, placed my palms on the table, and said, louder than I intended, "Adrian, everything in this restaurant belongs to me." He blinked. Once. Twice. Then he laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "Right. Okay. Are you sure you're not mixing things up again?" "No," I said. "I built the Driftwood house, and the other restaurants, and the catering company, and the distribution warehouse. All of it." His smile faltered. "Dad, stop. This isn't funny. It's not a joke." His jaw tightened, confusion slipping into irritation. He scanned the room, searching for someone to confirm his reality. A server hesitated near our table, unsure whether to approach. "Why would you say something like that?" Adrian asked. You've never run anything. You've always said you were retired." "No," I corrected gently. "I said I was finished with the hands-on work. I never said I didn't build it." He shook his head. "Dad, you're tired. You're confused again." The word again stung more than he knew. A sudden flash of pain shot through my side. I clenched my teeth, trying not to wince. His eyes narrowed as he noticed. "What's wrong? Did you forget your medication? You should have told me you weren't feeling well." I exhaled slowly. "I didn't tell you, because it's part of the conversation we're about to have." His expression shifted, annoyance mixing with something like concern, but buried under disbelief. Before he could speak again, I lifted my gaze and gave the slightest nod toward the entrance. Right on cue, Marla Hensley, my attorney of 15 years, stepped through the doorway, coat folded over one arm, portfolio in hand. She wasn't hiding behind a plant. We'd arranged to meet after the entrees. I had simply accelerated the schedule. Adrian followed my stare. When he recognized her, his breath hitched. "Why is she here?" he whispered. "Because," I said, feeling the truth settle heavily in my chest, "tonight is about more than dinner." For a moment, the room around us kept moving. Silverware chimed. Someone laughed at another table. A server called out "runner" toward the kitchen. But for Adrian and me, everything stilled. He didn't know it yet, but this wasn't just a reveal. This was the night his world, and mine, would finally collide. The tremor in my right hand had started earlier, before the fork comment, though I tried to hide it by pressing my palm flat against the cool edge of the table. Adrian noticed, of course. He always noticed, but not with curiosity, more like someone tracking a misbehaving device. He had sighed and said, "Did you take the morning pills? You've been off today." Off. A polite synonym he used for anything that didn't fit neatly into his caretaker narrative. Now, after Rosa called me Mr. Cole, that earlier sigh came back to haunt him. He stared at her, at me, then back at her. Color rose along his neck, embarrassment first, then defensiveness. "Why would you call him that?" Adrian asked, voice tight, polite in a way that wasn't polite at all. Rosa blinked. "That's what we've always called him, sir." Adrian gave a stiff, uncomfortable laugh. "Well, you must be confusing him with someone else." Rosa's brows knit. "I don't think so." I could see it, a flicker of irritation crossing Adrian's face. Not rage. Not yet. Just the frustration of a man whose version of reality wasn't being properly obeyed. When she stepped away, he leaned in, lowering his voice but sharpening it. "Dad, seriously, what is going on? Why would she think you?" "Because she's right," I said softly. He stared. Denial clung to him like static. "Dad, come on. I get it. You're trying to make a point, but this isn't funny." "I'm not trying to be funny. So you're telling me you own this restaurant?" He gestured around as if the walls themselves would answer. "This very room. This decor. This staff. This building." "Yes." He scoffed, a small, derisive exhale. "Right. Sure. And I'm the mayor." "Adrian." He cut me off sharper than he ever had. No, I'm not doing this. If you're confused, just say you're confused. Don't drag strangers into it." His voice wasn't loud, but the strain in it turned heads. A server paused near the bar, pretending to polish glasses. Someone 2 tables over leaned slightly, listening. Adrian noticed the attention and straightened, smoothing his shirt, trying to reclaim the veneer of calm. It didn't hold. "This is exactly what I meant earlier," he said, frustration rising like heat from pavement. "These episodes. You latch onto something and dig your heels in." That word again. Episodes. I bit back the urge to correct him too sharply. Instead, I exhaled slowly, though the breath snagged for a moment under my ribs. He caught it. His eyes narrowed. "Are you in pain?" "A little." "Why didn't you tell me?" That line cracked, not with softness, but with accusation. "Because tonight was supposed to be about the truth," I said. "And I needed you to hear it before anything else." He shook his head. "Hear what, Dad? That you're secretly some kind of hospitality mogul? That you've been hiding this insane story for decades? Why would you do that to me? Why hide something like that from your own son?" There it was, the anger. Rising, uneven, born from bruised pride and betrayal. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief, not regret, but a faint ache. I had always known this conversation would wound him. I had hoped to cushion it. Life had not given me the time. "I hid it," I said, my voice thinner than I intended, "because I saw what inherited wealth did to other families. I saw it hollow boys out, replace curiosity with entitlement, replace hunger with certainty. And I didn't want that for you. I wanted you to become something on your own legs." His face broke, only for a second, into something raw. "I spent years thinking you needed me, Dad. Do you understand that? I built my life around that." That landed harder than he knew. I swallowed, feeling the sting behind my ribs sharpen. "I know, and that's on me. I never meant for you to build your life around a lie." His anger wavered, uncertainty slipping through the cracks. "Show me," he said finally. "If all this is true, show me." I nodded once. At that exact moment, as if the room had been holding its breath, Marla Hensley stepped through the restaurant doors. Not rushed, not dramatic, just on time, wearing her slate-colored coat and carrying the portfolio that would dismantle the last of Adrian's disbelief. Adrian turned, saw her, and his breath hitched for real this time. He understood, instinctively, that whatever she carried wasn't about business. It was about inheritance, responsibility, time, and the truth neither of us could outrun any longer. Marla approached our table. "Adrian," she said calmly, "your father asked me to bring the documents." The murmur in the restaurant dimmed. Adrian's jaw clenched. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was the beginning of a reckoning decades in the making. The first sign something was wrong with my body came before the folder ever hit the table, A brief, sharp pinch beneath my ribs when I shifted in my seat. I masked it with a slow breath, but not well enough. Adrian's eyes flicked over, concern tightening his brow. "You good?" he asked softly. Not tender, monitoring, as if charting declines. "I'm fine," I lied, steadying myself with a palm against the linen tablecloth. That was the beat before everything fractured. When Marla placed the portfolio on the table between us, Adrian didn't touch it. His body went rigid, arms folding tightly across his chest, defensive, closed, preparing for impact. "I'm not opening anything until you explain what's happening," he said. His voice was low, but tension sharpened every word. Around us, the restaurant felt suddenly smaller. A glass clinked too loudly near the bar. A couple paused mid-conversation. Even the jazz seemed to lower its volume. I nudged the folder toward him. My hand trembled again, worse now, and this time Adrian's gaze locked onto it. "Adrian," I said gently, "this will answer the questions you're asking." He leaned back, jaw tight. "Why tonight? Why here? Why in front of everyone?" Because time was no longer something I could negotiate with. But I didn't say that. Instead, because the version of me you've been living with isn't the truth. His laugh was brittle. "I don't have a version of you. We all construct stories," I said softly. He flared. "Don't do that. Don't make this sound philosophical when you're dropping, whatever this is." A beat, a breath, a tightening in the air. Marla opened the portfolio and withdrew the operating summary. A thick, bound packet heavy with decades of decisions. Adrian's eyes tracked it like watching a weapon being unsheathed. "This is the Kalui Hospitality Group's master file," she explained. "Ownership structures, equity logs, tax filings." Adrian snapped. "Stop." Sharp. Instinctive. Marla paused. Not startled, simply courteous. Adrian's voice rose another octave. I said stop. His shout cracked through the room like a dropped tray. A fork clattered somewhere. Someone gasped. 2 tables over, a man muttered, "Jesus." Adrian's face burned with immediate shame. He smoothed his hair back, trying to recover composure. It only made him look more unsteady. "Adrian," I said quietly, "she's telling you the truth." He glared at me, anger finally blooming through the disbelief. "You lied to me," he said. "My whole life. You hid everything from me. Why? Why couldn't you trust me with the truth?" The anger was raw, not cruel. Wounded. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want money to shape who you became," I replied. "I've seen inheritance break families. I didn't want it to break you before you even had a chance." That's not your choice," he said, voice shaking. "You let me believe you needed me, that you were fragile." A line twisted between us. A painful truth neither of us could take back. I looked down at my hands, veins raised, skin thinner, tremor more noticeable than even a week ago. "I know," I said softly. "And I regret that more than you know." Something in him wavered. Not forgiveness, just the first fracture in certainty. Marla slid a few pages forward so he could see the signatures. My signatures. Page after page of them. 28 years worth. Adrian stared, jaw slowly unclenching. "These aren't forged," he whispered. "A concession. A surrender of one small piece of denial." "No," Marla said. "They're not." That was when Tony, the general manager, approached. He walked with the hesitant confidence of a man who knew something serious was happening, but also knew me well enough to intervene gently. "Mr. Cole," he said, voice low with familiarity. "Do you want me to clear the office for you? And are you all right? You're holding your side again." Noticing that detail, the side, was an accident. He'd seen it before. Many times. Adrian turned toward him sharply. "You call him Mr. Cole?" Tony blinked, confused. "Of course. He built this place." "Sir." The last word landed like a hammer. Adrian's face drained of color. Everyone knew. Everyone except him. He turned back to me slowly, fear finally overtaking anger. "Dad?" he whispered, barely audible. "What's happening to you?" The pain beneath my ribs pulsed again, sharp and unignorable. I closed my eyes briefly. "I wanted to tell you things in the right order," I said, voice cracking. "But I don't think I have that kind of time anymore." The room seemed to exhale in one collective, heavy breath. And in that moment, watching my son's world collapse, feeling my own body fail, I understood. There was no way back from this point. Only forward. Into the truth neither of us was ready for. The pain hit again before I could answer him. Sharp, low, radiating under my ribs. I pressed a hand there, trying to breathe through it. A slight groan escaped despite my effort to hide it. Adrian heard it. Of course he did. His head snapped up, eyes widening. Dad, what was that? Why are you holding your side like that? His voice had climbed a full octave, fear blending with anger. I forced a steadier breath. It's nothing. Stop saying that, he burst out too loud. Too raw. It's not nothing. You're shaking, you're wincing, you can barely sit straight. Dad, what is going on? His anger wasn't cruel. It was desperation sharpened into heat. The anger he should have shown earlier. The anger of a son realizing the ground under him is splitting open. Around us, the atmosphere changed. Forks paused midair. Chairs shifted in uneasy silence. A server near the bar pretended to check her apron pocket just to stay close enough to listen. Adrian leaned forward, breathing fast. Tell me the truth. Right now. My throat tightened, not from pain, but from the weight of what had to come next. I looked him in the eyes. I'm sick. Everything in him stilled. Even his anger, frozen by dread. What kind of sick, he whispered. Cholangiocarcinoma. He blinked slowly, as if the word didn't compute. I don't know what that is. Bile duct cancer, I said softly. He inhaled sharply, like the air had punched him. Okay. But there's treatment, right? Surgery? Chemo? Something. We tried. I swallowed. They didn't work. A sound escaped him, small, cracked, involuntary. His hands left the table, gripping the edge of the booth as if the room had tilted. His breath came unevenly. He tried to speak, but the words tangled. No, please. There has to be something else. There isn't, I said. My voice faltered on the last word. He stared at me, horrified, then abruptly stood halfway, like his body wanted to flee, but his mind hadn't given permission. His knee bumped the underside of the table, rattling the silverware. A few diners flinched at the sound. Adrian froze, embarrassed, overwhelmed, barely holding himself together. Then the anger surged back, not at me, but at the situation, at the universe, at every second he had lived believing a lie meant to protect him. You hid this too, he choked. You hid cancer from me? My voice cracked. Yes. Why? It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. Because I didn't want to tell you one painful truth without the rest, I said. You deserve to hear everything together. The business, my history, the time we have left. His face twisted. You don't get to decide that. You don't get to decide what I can handle. I thought I was protecting you. He let out a broken laugh. Protecting me? I wasted years thinking you needed my help. That you were fragile, slipping. I thought I was holding everything together, Dad. That was my identity. My grip tightened on the table. And that is exactly why I hid it. Marla, who had stepped back earlier, now stood just behind me. Silent. Still. A witness to the wreckage. Adrian dragged a trembling hand through his hair. I don't understand any of this. I don't know who you are. That hit harder than anything before. My vision blurred at the edges, not from pain, not from fear, but from regret. Long, heavy regret. I'm still your father, I said softly. Just a man who made choices and mistakes. He sank back into the booth, almost collapsing into it. Eyes shining with tears he refused to let fall. What now? Barely audible. Now. I reached for the folder again, sliding it toward him. My hand shook openly this time, and I didn't hide it. Couldn't. These are the succession documents, I said. Everything I built, it's meant to be yours. He stared at the folder like it might burn him. But, I added gently, wealth can destroy a man who isn't ready for it. I won't leave you something that eats you alive. That's why there are conditions. He looked up slowly, a mix of fear, anger, and disbelief swirling in his expression. Conditions, he echoed. Yes. What kind of conditions? I hesitated, too long. The silence between us turned thick and trembling. Through the glass partition, the kitchen's wood fire crackled softly. Someone dropped a spoon. A server whispered apologies to a table she nearly bumped. Life continued, indifferent to the collapse of ours. I looked at my son, my voice barely holding steady. We'll go through them, I said. But not tonight. Right now, we just sit with the truth. For the first time all night, he didn't argue. He just nodded, small, broken, scared. A long, fragile silence stretched between us. Only then did I say the line that would define everything that came next. We don't have much time, Adrian. But we still have enough to do this right. For a moment, Adrian just stared at his own hands, as if they might explain something to him. His fingers curled, straightened, curled again, restless, unsettled, trying to keep pace with the chaos unraveling inside him. The restaurant wasn't silent, but the sounds faded into a low blur. The muted clatter from the kitchen, the hum of conversation at distant tables, the faint scrape of cutlery on porcelain. Life continued, indifferent to the wreckage on our table. Adrian looked up, eyes rimmed with frustration and grief. "I still can't believe you hid all this from me," he said, not shouting now, but the anger had heat again. "The business, the money, the cancer, all of it." "I know," I said, "and I'm sorry." "Sorry." He gave a short, hollow laugh. "Dad, you lied for decades. Do you understand that? You didn't just hide things, you built a whole life outside of me. And I had no idea." His voice didn't rise, but the sharpness cut deeper than the earlier shouting. This was the anger that had been missing. Hurt anger. Human anger. "You should have trusted me," he said, exhale shaky but controlled now. "I spent years thinking you were fragile. Like I was the one keeping things steady. That was my mistake," I said. "Not yours." He leaned back, rubbing the heel of his palm against his forehead in a gesture of helplessness. "And what? You thought telling me everything in one night would fix it?" "No," I said, letting my voice soften. "I thought it would make it honest." The regret must have shown. My voice wavered at the end. For the first time, Adrian looked at me not with anger or fear, but with something close to recognition. A crack in his armor. Before he could respond, Marla stepped closer, not intruding, but present, a reminder that the truth wasn't just emotional. It was legal. It was final. Her steady gaze flicked between us, grounding the moment. Adrian stiffened when he noticed her. A flicker of dread crossed his face, as if her presence alone made everything too real, too official. "What's in these documents?" he asked, nodding toward the folder. "Your father's succession plan," Marla said, "and the structure required to execute it." "Structure," he repeated, bitter. "Meaning what exactly?" "It's not simple," she said gently. "There are timelines, financial triggers, operational protocols. Your father built something large and delicate. That landed, a subtle but important business stake. If he didn't step up, the empire wouldn't just transfer. It could fracture." Adrian blinked several times, overwhelmed. How big is all this? "Really? Large enough that a single mistake could put hundreds out of work," I said. "Large enough that walking in unprepared would do real harm." He swallowed hard. Fear flickered behind his eyes, not just for me now, but for something larger, something bigger than himself. I added quietly, "And the conditions exist to make sure that doesn't happen." There, a sharper hook, a reason beyond morality. Adrian tensed. "Conditions like what?" "You keep circling around it." "You weren't ready," I said simply. His jaw tightened, pride flaring again. "You think I'm incapable?" I corrected softly. "I think you've never been tested." This time, he didn't lash out. He absorbed it, visibly, painfully. His shoulders dropped. His breathing hitched. His eyes moved, unfocused, as if replaying his own life. The shortcuts, the comfort, the unearned confidence. The truth stung. That minute landed. Adrian looked away, blinking hard, steadying himself. "So what does being tested look like? What are you planning to put me through?" I didn't answer immediately. The pause wasn't silence, it was wait. "Finally," I said, "tomorrow we'll talk about the conditions. What it takes to earn this legacy. What it demands of you. And if I don't want them?" Adrian asked. This time I let the firmness show. Not harsh, not cold, just real. "Then you don't inherit," I said. His breath caught, a sharp inhale. His fingers tightened on the table's edge. For a second, he looked like he might push back, argue, reject all of it. But instead, he sagged, just slightly. A man finally aware of how much he could lose. Not wealth, not status, not reputation, but me, and time. I reached my hand across the table, not touching, just offering something to anchor to. "We don't have much time," I said quietly. A moment passed, unsteady, unresolved, still charged. Adrian didn't take my hand. Not yet. But he didn't pull away, either. And that was the first step. Adrian stood inside the back entrance of the dockline kitchen, shoulders hunched against the cold draft, expression pinched and defensive. The sun wasn't even up yet, just a thin gray suggestion on the glass. The kitchen lights hummed overhead, casting long reflections across steel countertops. The smell hit him next: yeast from morning dough, burnt onion from the night before, and the sharp bite of industrial detergent. He wrinkled his nose. "This place smells like a submarine," he muttered. "Good," I said. "Means it's alive." He shot me a look. Irritated, bruised, holding more than he wanted to reveal. Tony approached from the prep corridor, clipboard under one arm, steam clinging to his shirt like a second skin. He nodded at me, then addressed Adrian with neutral professionalism. "You're with me for the morning," he said. "Dish station to start. Rotations after that." Adrian stared at him, disbelief tightening his jaw. "Dish station. Right." Tony didn't blink. "You can handle it." "I didn't say I couldn't," Adrian snapped. "You didn't have to." A couple of line cooks glanced over, subtle side eyes, not mocking, just curious. They knew who he was. Kitchens always know. Adrian's ears flushed. He followed Tony into the dish pit, stepping into a blast of heat and humidity so thick it clung to his skin. Machines thumped. Water hissed. Racks slammed. Steam fogged everything, including his glasses. "This is—" Adrian paused, squinting at the mountain of plates. "A lot." "That's breakfast prep for one location," Tony said. "Try it when 5 are running." Adrian let out a harsh breath, half frustration, half disbelief, then grabbed the spray hose. The first jet of scalding water splashed against a metal pan and ricocheted back, soaking his sleeve. "Shit." A prep cook passing behind him murmured. "First day, huh?" Not unkind, just observant. Steam clouded Adrian's face. The heat wrapped around him like a smothering blanket. His hands slipped against the slick handles of pots. The metallic scent of steel and soap filled his mouth. He tried to find a rhythm, but rhythm requires surrender, and Adrian was still fighting the room. He sprayed again, overcorrected, and sent a wave of suds over the edge of the sink. A stack of plates slipped in his grip, clattering loudly. "Careful," someone shouted. "Watch your station. Gloves or no gloves, pick one." He muttered under his breath, "This is insane," and scrubbed harder, the sponge squealing against ceramic. His frustration rose, face flushed, nostrils flaring, breath sharp. At one point he straightened, chest heaving, and snapped. "There has to be a better system for all this." Tony stepped in. "There is. It's called experience." Adrian glared. "I'm trying, okay?" "No," Tony said calmly. "You're reacting. There's a difference." That line hit. It stung his pride in a fresh place. By mid-morning, Adrian was drenched in sweat despite the cold outside. His shirt stuck to him. His hands trembled from the constant gripping and scrubbing. His fingertips burned from the detergent. A timer beeped sharply in the background, cutting through the constant thrum of the kitchen. Someone slammed the oven door. The pace never slowed. Not once. When Adrian finally sagged onto an overturned crate beside the walk-in fridge, he didn't drop. He folded, elbows resting on his knees. Steam had flattened his hair. His breathing had the thin, metallic edge of exhaustion. He looked up when I approached. "Don't say anything motivational," he warned. "I wasn't going to," I said. "Just wanted to see how you're holding up." He scoffed, wiping sweat from his brow. "I'm fine." He was not fine. "You lasted longer than most first-timers," I said. "That's still patronizing." I meant it literally. He paused, thrown off, unsure what to do with sincerity. I lowered myself carefully beside him, a slow, deliberate movement. Pain sparked under my ribs again. This time, I didn't hide it. I winced, quietly but visibly. Adrian's head snapped toward me. "You okay?" "Mostly," I said, catching my breath. "This is why the conditions matter." He frowned. "Because you're sick?" "No. Because leadership means understanding the people who break their backs to keep your world standing." Adrian's gaze dropped to the dish gloves in his hands. He flexed them once, jaw tight. "And if I don't," he asked. "Then you'll lead from above instead of within," I said. "And that destroys a business faster than anything." He closed his eyes briefly, overwhelmed. When he opened them, something had shifted. Not peace, not acceptance, something more primal. Willingness. He looked at me with equal parts resentment and resolve. "There are more conditions, aren't there?" "Yes." "And this is just the beginning?" "Yes." He stared ahead at the steam, the constant movement of bodies in the kitchen, the noise that never stopped. Then, with a long exhale, he said, "All right, what's next?" Not surrender, not obedience. A step, and that was everything. By the time lunch prep rolled in, Adrian's movements had smoothed into something almost competent. He still moved like a man learning a new language, but the kitchen responded the way kitchens do, not with praise, but with shifts in tolerance. A prep cook angled his cutting board an inch. A server let him pass without a clipped behind. Small calibrations, enough to keep him upright. Tony handed him a short list, voice level and practical. 5 tasks. Keep them tight. Mistakes here cost time and money. Adrian read the list. Wipe stations, portion butter, label containers, break down boxes, restock dry storage. He sounded steadier than he felt. Got it. The first 3 tasks went cleanly. He wiped stainless until it reflected light. He portioned butter with the neatness of someone who'd once done spreadsheets for a living. He labeled containers with careful, painfully precise handwriting. Each small success was a salve. Then came the boxes. They were ordinary, produced boxes from the morning delivery, stacked in a spillover pile because the bin was full. Adrian meant only to be helpful. He flattened one box, then another, folding them so they'd stack neatly. The prep area was busy. A line cook reached for a tray at the same time he stepped back. Adrian set his stack in the nearest clear patch of floor, thinking it was out of the way. He didn't see the rolling ice bucket set against the wall. He didn't notice the small puddle of condensation where the walk-in vent dripped. He didn't hear the busser call out behind him because the clatter of pans swallowed voices. The chain reaction was not cinematic. It was domestic, stupid, and immediate. A busser, rushing with a tray of cleared plates, caught his foot on the edge of Adrian's stack. The tray tipped, a clatter of plates, a high, accidental crash. The busser grabbed, lost balance, and shoved against the boxes. One box teetered, then the next. A pastry tray that had been waiting, set temporarily on top of a box to cool, tumbled and hit the floor, icing scattering across tile. Silence snapped like a rubber band. The kitchen stopped in its tracks for 2 solid beats. Then voices rose, sharp, practical. Watch the walk, someone barked. Get those off the floor, another snapped. Who put boxes there? Came a voice tight with irritation. Adrian froze, cheeks burning. He opened his mouth, closed it. The apology sat like a stone. Tony arrived first, not shouting, just steady. Adrian, what happened? There wasn't room in the bin, so he began, then stopped. His words thinned into helplessness. He swallowed, throat tight. For a second there was no script. Tony's reaction was a look more than a line. Level, disappointed but not cruel. He bent, gathered the worst of the spill, and barked one efficient instruction to the team. A pastry cook, face set in annoyance, snatched up a towel and started salvage work, muttering about timing and waste. His hand brushed Adrian's arm as he passed, an absent, irritated gesture rather than consolation. You okay? I asked, stepping into the doorway. My voice sounded too loud in the hush. Adrian's voice came out small. I didn't see. You didn't see. Tony said, finishing for him, but softer this time. You'll learn to see. It wasn't a sermon. It was a fact. He hesitated, then said the thing people say when they mean it and don't. I'm sorry. The apology was delayed, long enough that it felt earned. A sous chef huffed and returned to the line, eyes not unkind but impatient. The busser checked his ankle, grunted, and went back to work. The kitchen moved. The shift resumed. No melodrama, only the steady, unforgiving churn anyone who works with food knows well. I stepped closer to Adrian then, lowering my voice so only he could hear. The room was still humming. The rhythm returned. Do you see why this matters? I asked. He ran a hand across his face, jaw clenched. Yeah. His voice wobbled once, then steadied. I see. You didn't just trip over boxes, I said. You created ripple effects. That's what leadership is about. When something breaks, how you fix it matters more than the mistake. My words landed, but my ribs clenched with a sharper pain. I pressed a palm there and stumbled slightly. The gesture was small. Adrian saw it. For a moment his anger and shame narrowed into pure concern. Dad? He asked, immediate. I'm fine. I lied, then corrected with a softer truth. Mostly. Just tired. He watched me, eyes searching. There's more, isn't there? His voice was wary now, less bravado, more calculation. There are more conditions, I said. You'll learn them as you go. They're not traps. They're tests. He let out a breath that might have been a laugh once. Now it was something like a surrender, not defeat, not triumph, a complicated readiness. Tomorrow, then, he said, voice low. I'll be here. He meant it, but his fingers tightened on the edge of the prep table, an unspoken knot of fear and resolve. The kitchen hummed back to life around them, indifferent and exacting. Tony clapped a towel into Adrian's hands. Good. Now clean that mess up and get back to work. Adrian moved, a little slower, a little stiffer, but moving. He stopped once at the walk-in's doorway, looking toward the dining room where people still ate obliviously, and then returned to the kitchen fold. The mistakes had been real. The consequences, too. The getting up mattered more than the falling. Outside, the afternoon light shifted. Inside, the work continued, relentless, ordinary, and utterly unforgiving. The office above the restaurant was dim in the early morning. Prep downstairs hadn't fully kicked in yet, staggered shifts, so the usual symphony of banging pans and shouted orders hadn't started. Only the steady hum of the refrigeration units vibrated faintly through the floor. Adrian paused in the doorway. Elias sat at the metal desk, elbows close to his ribs as if holding himself steady. The fluorescent light cast a washed-out sheen across his face. He wasn't overnight thinner. It was subtler than that. More in the slump of his shoulders, the careful way he breathed. Adrian swallowed. You sure you want to do this today? A flick of Elias's eyes. If we wait until I feel strong, we'll never do it. Not poetic, just the truth. Adrian closed the door slowly behind him. He had the posture of a man who'd barely slept. Not defeated, not proud, just unsure. Deeply unsure. What's today's condition? He asked, but the question caught in his throat halfway. He steadied his voice. I mean, what's next? Elias rested a hand on a folder in front of him. His fingers trembled once before settling. This, he said, but before you open it. He stopped, breath snagging. He had to restart the sentence. Before you open it. I need you to be ready for what it means. Adrian tensed. Ready how? You might not like it. A flash of frustration crossed Adrian's face. Quick, human, a last pulse of the ego he'd been shedding piece by piece. Then why don't you just tell me what it is instead of? A knock interrupted him. A rapid double tap. Rosa cracked the door open. Sorry, Mr. Cole. Everything okay up here? You look. Elias nodded gently. I'm all right. Give us a few minutes. She hesitated, eyes lingering on how pale he looked. Then she nodded and closed the door. Adrian exhaled through his nose. She's worried. Everyone downstairs sees more than they say, Elias murmured. They've known me a long time. Adrian glanced at him sharply, discomfort flickering across his face. He still wasn't used to the idea that strangers knew his father better than he did. Elias pushed the folder across the desk. It's simplified, he said. The real clause is buried in the full plan. But this version, this is for you. Adrian hesitated, then opened it. A single page. Legal formatting, but the sentence at the center was underlined. Successorship will only be granted upon demonstrated capability to operate key functions of the company in the founder's absence. Adrian blinked. So, you're saying I have to learn to run everything without you hovering? Without me being here at all, Elias corrected gently. Adrian frowned, not angry, but confused. Teetering. You're saying this like you're about to. Elias looked down, then back up. His voice cracked on the first word. Adrian. The crack undid Adrian more than the words that followed. I don't have many weeks, Elias said quietly. The sentence stole all the air from the room. Adrian's throat tightened so quickly it almost hurt. Weeks? I thought, you never said. I didn't want to anchor you to a date, Elias said. Only to a purpose. Adrian moved a step closer, then another, then stopped, halfway between the doorway and the desk. Like he didn't know if he should run forward or turn away. This isn't fair, he whispered. No, Elias said. It isn't. Adrian's jaw clenched. A tremor ran down his arm. You should have told me when it started. I was a coward, Elias said. Not about dying. About losing you before I had to. The honesty hit like a physical blow. Adrian's breath stuttered. Not a sob. Not yet, but the edge of one. He stepped forward again, slow, hesitant, as if worried he might do it wrong. He put a hand on the desk, but didn't touch his father yet. And now, he asked, voice raw. Now I need you to believe you can do this, Elias said. I need to know I'm not leaving people behind to fend for themselves. I need to know the work meant something to more than just me. That's the last condition? Adrian asked, A crumb of fear. A crumb of resolve. No, Elias said softly. He hesitated. 2 beats. 3. Gathering the breath he needed. It's the last thing I want. Adrian lowered his head, eyes glistening. I don't know if I can be you. I don't want you to be me, Elias said. His voice faltered again, thin. What I built it worked. But it cost things. Time. People. You. Adrian flinched at that. I want you to build something less lonely, Elias whispered. Adrian closed his eyes. One tear escaped. Just one. Catching on his jaw before he wiped it away. He didn't promise immediately. He didn't straighten heroically. He just breathed, shaky and uncertain. I'll try, he finally said. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'll try. Elias exhaled. Relief and sorrow tangled in the sound. Trying is enough. It always was. Adrian stepped around the desk. Slowly, carefully. He hesitated. The old fear, the old distance. But then he wrapped his arms around his father. Not perfectly, not gracefully, but honestly. Elias leaned into it, weaker than he wanted Adrian to know. Somewhere downstairs, a pan dropped, a muffled clang carrying through the floorboards. Life continuing. Work beginning. A world that needed both of them, but would soon have only one. When they finally separated, Adrian glanced at the folder. There's still paperwork we haven't gone through. Elias nodded once. There's always more work. Adrian let out a breath, one that held fear, hope, and the weight of everything ahead. Then we'd better start, he said, while we still have time. They sat beside each other as the kitchen roared awake beneath them. Not finished, not fixed, not fearless, but together. And for the first time, that was enough.